Okay, Arnis Americas.
Was your dad a porter on it or something like that?
Not a lot for us to remember about it because we were really young. So a lot of information probably won't be. You probably have to. It would be better to talk to people who were there at the time. But what do you know from a bunch of kids who are not 10 years old yet, right? From what we remember, though, we definitely knew at the time my father was the president. Right?
Yeah.
He was the president of Arnis Americas. I think their main thing, from what we understood from what my father was saying, was it was like an organization that was made so you can meet a lot of Filipino masters, Filipino martial art masters. So that I think that was one of the. So I remember, there was a lot of masters like Grandmaster Don Cuesta was there. I don't know if he's grand. I think Master Don Cuesta. I don't really know the titles. No disrespect. Professor V. Yeah, he was there. Right? Matt Marinas from Pananandata. That's my dad. One of my dad's favorites. Because he was using that really long 36-inch stick. And he had the whip and the ring and stuff. Leo Gaje was there. I think Leo Gaje was he actually ran it. He was not ran like my father was president. I think he ran training. They said we're not really sure. Just probably putting this together out of context. So, Remy Presas. We heard he was there, but I think him and Master Leo had some beef over a magazine article. There was always some beefs going on over there. Every time you have an organization, there's always some crazy shit like that happening. So my dad was president for a while. After that incident with the fight that he had in Brooklyn, it changed. Like he wasn't going there anymore. And he was home a lot because they were training all the time. I think my dad was there for 77. By 80, we moved to Jamaica in 79, and by then he wasn't going there, and he was avoiding people that were going out there. So every time they would call on the phone, my dad would be like, "I'm not here. Just tell him I'm not here." So that's by 1980. So I think he rolled over there for 2 years, or maybe 3, which is really weird if you think about 2 or 3 years with us. You train at Atienza for 2 or 3 years. You learn stuff, but as far as being effective, it takes a while to learn anything effective, right? So that's part of what we're saying, what he learned from Arnis Americas that didn't work. It's probably because of that. He wasn't there long enough. I don't know. I'm just using it as someone right now who teaches. Maybe he just wasn't there long enough. That's why things had to be modified, because he wasn't going back there to train anymore because of the beefs that were going on over there. And it was weird. All the Filipinos left. Pamanatuan was there, Chris Sayoff. But he was young. He was 15, 16. Around those years, he was a teenager. And he was the one in charge mainly of training the kids. So we had a lot of interaction with him. So we learned Taekwondo.
Right.
Yeah, Kibon 1 was a form that we learned, mainly to put a bunch of really rowdy, not rough, but undisciplined kids, who were just high energy, trying to teach them to be to move at the same time. And then we learned basic Arnis. So back then it was Arnis Americas. So what did we do? 12 attacks. What else? Triangle footwork. What else?
Four-wall, umbrella.
Locking.
Yeah.
And umbrellas.
How about break and break out? Did they have that at that time?
Yeah, they had break and break out. We had 2 drills that we learned. Had a lot of checking hands.
Broken 6. Right.
Yeah.
Drills, 2-stick drills.
Wally drills, yeah. Coordination stuff, not fight stuff that was designed for people to learn how to coordinate. It's good for kids. It was really good for us because we learned a lot of coordination.
And demo stuff, right?
And then they did a lot. Yeah, they did a lot of demos. So every time there was a Filipino festival, they would do demos, machete demos and forms type stuff, But that's the extent of it. there was some weird thing that happened there. You know, as a kid, you get to hear the adults talk. My dad said it in passing as we were growing up why he left, and it was like something illegal happened, or main thing for my dad is like he got into that trouble, and when it was time for people to help him, he didn't get the help. That was one of the things we heard. And that was pretty much it. And then, you know, after that he left Arnis Americas, and then he just was training us. And that time it was the 80s, then 82, 83, like you know, all the cracks started coming to the neighborhoods, and then the neighbors started getting bad, and then he just started focusing on training us as much as possible. So we started to see a lot of really rough fights. It became fist fights, and then the straight razors, and people trying to hit each other, and guns and stuff. Like, it started getting really bad there. And I remember the training started to step up a little bit, because up until like age 9, it was like training for children. Like, that's what you teach kids. And then the training changed. You needed like 9, 10, 11, 12. We started getting trained. As I look back, we started getting trained like adults. Right?
Yeah, and the urgency of it was the seriousness of it stepped up.
And you got to remember, like, the neighborhood wasn't bad when we were little kids. It started getting bad, and we started to feel like we might get into some stuff. So now I used to go to the corner store every morning, the coffee shop in the corner. It's like right around the block, and I would get my dad coffee. You know, he'd go get me a butter roll and coffee. And then one day I got robbed at gunpoint. I was like 9 years old. That, you know, I tell him the stories. You know, when you're that young, you don't really see anything from a perspective other than a young kid, because you have no idea. But now that I'm older, like I'm 49 years old now, and, you know, I look at my nieces and nephews and the kids of all the guys in the group that train, and imagine your kid coming home saying you got mugged at gunpoint. You know what I mean? For like $19 or something like that. So he knew the neighborhood was getting bad, and he knew we were not going to get out of that neighborhood anytime soon because the money wasn't right yet.
Right. That was it.
So he had to train it. So I remember having that footwork. I remember having those attacks. Like, they give you all the targets and stuff. But like the way we trained it from my father, we thought it was what they were learning in Arnis Americas. Because we just assumed, right, that he's going to this class, and then we're learning something. We went from not wanting to train to every time we trained, we would train. All right, we're going to practice now. We would just no question, we would train. And then you start to hear about people who are getting shot and dying, and people who are getting stabbed and hacked and stuff like that. And then we saw one fight in front of our house where the drug gangs were fighting. A drug gang fought friends of ours. So a little while before this incident, I had gotten robbed coming back from a coffee shop by a kid. I was like 9 years old, and the kid put a pistol in my face, took $19 from me. And I remember like that was the time when it started like getting bad. And then I had a friend of mine there that would help me. He was from down south. He would help me with like my bicycle, and he was an older kid, maybe 15, 16. And I remember I told him, hey, there's that kid that robbed me. He was like, that guy right there? I said, yeah. He got up from where we were. I was like, what's he doing? And I was just saying it to be like, oh shit, that guy's over there, not like do something. It was like I was shocked. I saw, you know, I don't know if you guys have been involved in stuff like that when you're young, but when you see the guy who did it, it makes you a little scared, right? So I said, that's that guy right there, just to point out, I guess I was scared. And he goes, that guy over there? Yeah. And he walks over to him, and I don't know what he's saying. He's talking, and he slaps him in his face. Bang. And then they start going, boom, boom, boom. They start, and he beat him up, meaning like he punched his face more than he got his face punched. And the guy that he beat, the guy that robbed me, goes, I'll be back. And then he came back with like 7 guys, and these guys were the dope boys around the corner. And it was fast. It wasn't like they came back within 30 minutes. So those guys are already out there. So, you know, they get all their tools together and they go up. And then it's one of the first like rumbles that we watched. So bang starts going, bang, they fight, you know, straight razors and curtain rods.
Yeah.
And garbage cans. Now the brother that I knew, the guy that I knew, he had a brother, and then his mom came out, and his mom was fighting with his two brothers, and it stopped because they were tired. Nobody really got hurt. Like maybe they got cut with a razor or something. But I remember that we saw that, and it, at that point we had seen a lot of fights, so this was like a good fight. It was a big fight. It was like watching a football game, and guys were watching it on the side, and we were like, yeah, everybody was cheering. It was fun. It was funny. And then they all left. Those guys that I knew, they got beat pretty good. Not enough to go to the hospital. They on the street, they got their asses whipped. Right? And the mom had to come out and help them. Like that was the word on the street. And those guys wound up moving back down south. So my dad comes home at night, and I'm telling me, brother, oh, Bob, we just saw this fight. It was crazy, But we were scared because this fight was crazy. Like as a young kid, like a 10-year-old or something, it's scary to look at. And I said, hey, Bob, now maybe we should go train with Master Leo. Because it's getting, I just said it, not in my head. I thought it was getting crazy.
Tito Leo, right?
Tito Leo, maybe we should, because we used to call him Tito Leo. So maybe we should go Tito Leo. And he goes, and then his face dropped, and he's like, no, like he said, no.
Yeah.
That's my dad. No. I said, why? Because up until this point, he would talk about Master Leo good, like how he was, like he taught him these things, and and we were doing some stuff from the Arnis Americas, which is Pikiti Tarisha, and then we would do some stuff that was my dad's, like the fight stuff, right? And I was like, why not? Maybe you should send us over, because I think he was still around at this time. He was still in the States, and man, he just said straight, like, you can't learn, like the things that we're about to see, right? You can't learn how to fight from someone who is a coward. Like, he's a coward, like the way he's a coward, because of the way my dad said it. I was like, and it was shocking to us, like, coward. This is the guy that you've been talking about this whole time. That was this guy. He goes, no, he's a coward. He's all talk and no action. He's like a forums guy. He's a demo guy. He said the things you guys feel good about him. And he said, my dad doesn't talk to about anybody like that.
Right.
But he knew that I was trying to get better at something. And he was like, another few years, you guys will be way better than everybody over there. As far as like real fighting, like real life and death stuff. Not tournaments, none of that. None of that. He used to call tournaments bullshit, all that bullshit. Like if you hit a guy and then you turn around, like shit like that. People like a point, or you get hit and then they turn and they raise their hands. I'm like, that's not how fighting is. That's actually when you get shot. And I remember after that, the training got serious. It got real serious. When I was 13, my dad tested us, and it was a live blade test, and you had to like tap and stuff. It had to be done in the dark. It was at night, and it was. My dad had a thing about doing things during the full moon, because the full moon was known for making things crazy, and if you could calm yourself while under the effects and the power of the full moon and keep calm, like you were training, right? And I remember he pulled out a live blade in there, and he was, and then you do your thing, you try and lock, and you hit him a couple of times, and then he stops us, right, you're good, and then you're stretching afterwards, and I remember like, man, my leg is sticky, and then it's like, my ankle, what's going on? I checked, and I had blood on my ankle. So I traced it. I had got stabbed through the hand and went through, and I remember I told Pop, I got stabbed in the hand, and he goes, yeah, but you kept fighting, that's good. I said, you went all the way down. I said, you remember that, because that's how it happens. And I remember my mom was freaking out, because you got to get stitches and all that. So the training was getting serious. Remember
the threat of that steel will overwhelm my senses and froze, and that's what he's looking for. And you get to that point, and then you work back. He works back to that, and you overcome it. What he was doing was, for me, right? He was desensitizing us to the threat, right? Making us like making us used to doing it with fear, and then doing it without fear. And the important thing is doing it with fear. The important thing that he was working at, I think, right, is we have to perform whatever we need to perform while under the threat of, mortal fear, right? Because you don't, like, when it comes time to actually do something, you're not going to get a second chance. There's no reset.
Yeah, you could be scared, but once that blade gets close to you,
you have
the training turns on,
and then
there's no fear anymore. And he would always say that, and then we would see it.
Right.
You know, guys would carry screwdrivers and she'd try and stab you in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool because that's how we learned how to strip, because there was no edges, there were screwdrivers. And you could be scared, and the moment the guy moves to you, you're pop, 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 man, and you start getting at me, you're like, wow, it was just like training, but that guy sucks worse than the way my dad trains us. And yet today it's still the same. You know, we still do that training with the guys. Like, you know, it's very hard to mimic life and death in training, because your training partners are not trying to kill you, and so they don't have that intent being projected at you. But man, we get close enough that when it really happens, that the rest of that gets filled in during the day it happens, and those guys pass with flying colors, and we usually get constant verifications of that. And man, that's still happening today. Like, you would think that would stop, but man, we got guys in the organization now, we're seeing some things coming back, and they're like, all that shit worked. Like, the way that guy attacked me was way slower than the way you guys attacked me. Like, that's why we do that. You know what I mean? That's why the feed has to be a certain way. And that was from my, you know, that was my dad. That's the way he saw things.